are the latest developments.
We are achieving all those objectives. We are ahead of schedule on most of them, and we can achieve them without any ground troops.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the military operation in Iran is expected to be over in weeks, not months.
They're being hit so hard, anybody would be negotiating.
The U.S. president doubles down on his assertion that the U.S. is in talks with Iran, despite denials from Tehran. Iran keeps up the pressure as it launches a new wave of strikes into Israel, killing one man in Tel Aviv. Southern Lebanon is heavily damaged, with Israel's so-called buffer zone expanding 30 kilometers into Lebanese territory. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Washington believes the war with Iran could end within weeks without the need for ground troops. He also says Washington has received signals from Iran suggesting a willingness to engage.
We're going to destroy their Navy, we're going to destroy their Air Force, and we are going to significantly destroy their missile launchers so they can never hide behind these things to get a nuclear weapon. We are achieving all those objectives. We are ahead of schedule on most of them, and we can achieve them without any ground troops, without any.
This as a new wave of Israeli airstrikes hits Iran, including near the Bushehr nuclear power plant and other sites described as nuclear research facilities. Iranian media say 3 residential homes were struck in the city of Qom, killing at least 18 people. Rescue teams in Tehran are searching through the rubble as officials say the death toll from the conflict has risen to more than 1,900. We're live in Ramallah, Beirut, Dubai, and Tehran, but we begin our coverage in Washington, D.C. with Rosalind Jordan.
Even as the Trump administration is celebrating the fact that it is now involved in indirect negotiations with Iran on ending the war, which is in its 29th day, the U.S. is still talking tough about the need to obliterate Iran's military capabilities, its nuclear ambitions, and threatening to destroy its infrastructure if Tehran does not capitulate to Washington's demands. This is what the U.S. President Donald Trump had to say during a speech at a Saudi investment conference in Miami late on Friday.
We're crushing Iran's currently as we speak. I just looked. We had another big day. We hit them. They don't know what's happening. Remember this. They lied about 3 days ago. I said, yeah, we're negotiating with Israel. We are not negotiating. They're being hit so hard. Anybody would be negotiating. They are negotiating. They're begging to make a deal. They're begging to make a deal. Turned out I was right. They were negotiating, which they admitted 2 days later. And in order to make up for their misstatement, they said, we're going to send you 8 ships of oil. And the following day I saw, this is 2 days ago, I saw on one of the networks, very strange, there were 8 ships of oil coming out of Iran. And then they actually said, we're going to add an extra 2. And they added an extra 2.
The tough talk from Donald Trump comes in the middle of a pause until April 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, during which the U.S. and Iran are trying to negotiate via Pakistan an end to the war. This is a situation where the U.S. says that if Iran does not give the U.S. what it wants, which is basically neutering its self-defense capabilities as well as abandoning all of its nuclear ambitions, the U.S. will resume a full-scale military attack. There's also a concern that the U.S. might be planning a ground invasion of Karg Island in order to basically hold hostage a key part of Iran's economy. The U.S. will only say it is putting into position all possibilities depending on how these talks work out. Rosalind Jordan, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Iran says Israel's strikes on its nuclear facilities contradict calls for diplomacy. Tehran's top diplomat has criticized the attacks, saying they undermine efforts to reach a political solution. In a statement posted on X, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi wrote, Israel has hit 2 of Iran's largest steel factories, a power plant, and civilian nuclear sites, among other infrastructure. He went on to say, Israel claims it acted in coordination with the U.S. attack, contradicts POTUS' extended deadline for diplomacy. Iran will exact a heavy price for Israeli crimes. Well, let's cross now to Tehran, where Tawhid Asadi is standing by for us live. Tawhid, Iran is saying it will retaliate for these attacks that were mentioned by the foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi. Do we know what those retaliatory strikes might target?
Well, actually, we have been hearing stronger messages from Tehran, and it seems that from the realities on the ground, we are going through another layer of complexity added to this already intricate situation. We know that over the past 24 hours or so, there are very important facilities of the country being targeted, including those facilities related to the nuclear program of the country in the cities of Khondab and in the city of Yazd. Of course, this is obviously a major blow when it comes to the nuclear program of the country, seeing the significance of those targeted areas and seeing the fact that previously we know that from June and from the very recent rounds of strikes that three other important facilities in Isfahan, Natanz and Fordo were targeted. So this is one part of the story. The other part is that now we're facing a new layer, seeing that power plant was targeted and other infrastructures were targeted, and that is coming with a very strong response from the Iranian side. As I told you earlier, we've got this post on the X account of the aerospace head of IRGC, the Revolutionary Guards, who came out to strongly warn that, quote unquote, you tried us once and world saw that you played with fire by attacking the infrastructures of the country. This time it's not going to be a tit-for-tat strategy, and keep waiting. He has also warned against the people who are working in the industrial segments of the companies related or affiliated with the United States or the Israeli side. And that is obviously a new level of warning that we hear from the Iranian side, while they also talked about the new wave of their retaliatory strikes over the past few hours.
So let me also ask you about the fact that both President Trump and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio have been adamant that negotiations between the U.S. and Iran are happening. What's the latest we're hearing from the Iranians?
Well, as we spoke to a high-ranking diplomatic official in that regard, he preferred to call it mediated communication as usual in such circumstances, not the diplomatic engagement or negotiation in the wording that the Americans are putting. And that is the echo of the same statement that we heard from the foreign minister, from the spokesperson for the military headquarters of Khatamul Anbiya, and from the Speaker of the Parliament. And of course, there's a longer list of Iranian officials who are coming out all to say that there is no possibility of getting engaged in talks with the United States at this point, for which at least we can see three important contextual elements. We have to keep in mind, first, we're dealing with a much more delicate situation compared to the two times that the two countries were involved. And then second, there is this cloud of mistrust by Iranians when it comes to their vantage point towards the possibility of talks with the United States, and that comes from the background that they were already engaged in two rounds of talks, and back in June when they were negotiating, and again a couple of weeks ago when they were negotiating, all of a sudden they faced a campaign of unprecedented airstrikes targeting the country. And last but not least, we hear from Tehran that any possibility for diplomatic trajectory would be conditioned upon the halting of these ongoing airstrikes. The reality on the ground is far from that at this point.
All right, that's Tawhid Asadi with all the latest from Tehran in Iran. Thanks so much, Tawhid. Israel has said that a missile has been launched from Yemen towards southern Israel, the first since the